For yet another week, West Asia remains on edge. The United States and the United Kingdom have carried on targeted strikes across countries. Is the week looking to escalate the war? Here's a roundup of what has happened in the last 7 days. Take a look.
West Asia remains on edge over escalating crisis in the Red Sea. The United States and UK military have ramped up attacks on Yemen's Houthi establishments, signaling a rise in regional tensions. The countries first launched attacks on January 11th. But in the past week alone, both nations targeted over 8 Houthi strongholds, firing 25 to 30 missiles in joint operations. The West has maintained that it is carrying out these strikes in the Red Sea in self-defense.
Initial reports that we're getting indicate that we had effective results on all 3 targets. 2 headquarters buildings and an intelligence facility were destroyed. I want to emphasize that these actions were taken in self-defense, following, of course, the attack on our forces in Iraq, and certainly consistent with international and domestic law.
However, the pushback has seemingly failed to deter the Houthis from attacking what it claims are Israeli-affiliated vessels. The Iran-backed group has reiterated that it won't back down from showing its solidarity with Gaza, and that the Houthis will retaliate to the joint strikes by Western forces.
The Yemenis anticipated that the United States and Britain would relaunch the aggression against Yemen because the US was the original protector and guardian of the Zionist entity, and they are now in pain. Why are the Yemenis playing such an active and influential role in the Red Sea and currently trying to take revenge on Israel? They will deal with these strikes with harsh and effective responses as soon as possible. The Yemeni people are studying when and where the armed forces will give a response.
In light of the military escalation, Yemen's Houthi authorities have asked US and British staff of the United Nations and other humanitarian organizations to leave the country. The decision also comes days after the United States redesignated the Houthis as a terrorist organization. And while the rebel group does not control all of Yemen, its influence seeps deep into the civil society. Amid the maritime crisis, Gaza continues to crumble under Israel's military aggression. The Palestinian Health Ministry says close to 26,000 people have been killed so far, and the numbers keep rising by the day. In the latest military operations, Israeli Defense Forces targeted a UN shelter in Gaza's Khan Yunis. The region has one of the largest UN RWA facilities, and it's currently home to 30,000 displaced Palestinians. The latest surge of strikes has drawn flack from the United States and global humanitarian organizations alike. But Israel maintains that the war in Gaza will only end with the elimination of Hamas, a goal their military is yet to achieve. Bureau Report WION The World is One.
It has been around 2 months since the last hostage swap deal between the Israelis and Hamas, with talks about a fresh deal on the table. There remains one point of contention: a permanent end to the war in Gaza and a long-lasting peace solution. Now, are both parties willing to break the deadlock? Our next report tells you more.
In the midst of a war spillover, all eyes are on closed-door hostage talks that so far have yielded no result. The past week has witnessed a series of back and forth on lasting ceasefire and the hostage swap. At first, reports surfaced on a possible 2-month ceasefire in Gaza. The deal was supported to facilitate a hostage prisoner exchange between Israel and Hamas. But so far, the deal faces a dead end, with officials stating a clash of demands on certain fundamental issues.
Commenting on reported ceasefire agreements, Israel will not give up on the destruction of Hamas, the return of all the hostages, and there will be no security threat from Gaza towards Israel. There will be no ceasefire. In the past, there were pauses for humanitarian purposes. That agreement was breached by Hamas.
Hamas's demand for Israeli forces to withdraw from Gaza and end the war is a deal breaker for the Netanyahu government. And now the two parties are at an impasse over the length and nature of the truce.
I utterly reject the Hamas's monstrous capitulation terms. Hamas is demanding, in exchange for the release of our hostages, the end of the war, the withdrawal of our forces from Gaza, the release of the murderers and rapists of the Nukba, and leaving Hamas in place. Were we to agree to this, our soldiers would have fallen in vain. Were we to agree to this, we would not be able to ensure the security of our citizens. We would be unable to safely restore the evacuees to their homes, and the next October 7th would be only a question of time. I am not prepared to accept such a mortal blow to the security of Israel. Therefore, we will not agree to this.
However, in the past couple of days, talks seem to have taken a more serious turn, with fresh reports indicating a potential month-long ceasefire for hostages to be released in return for Palestinian prisoners held by Israel, and for a greater influx of aid into Gaza. Both parties appear to have reached an agreement in principle, but the deal hangs in balance over Gaza's long-term future. With each passing day, an uncertainty over the return of Israeli captives triggers fresh protests in Israel. Families of hostages stormed the Knesset, disrupting the parliament panel several times. Hundreds of protesters also took to the streets outside the defense ministry, urging the Netanyahu government to bring the hostages home.
My brother, Dror, is 49 years old. He's being held in Gaza for 110 days. And we came here today to tell the Israeli government that we are demanding them to do everything they can and to initiate another agreement with Hamas to release Dror and the other hostages right now, today, sooner than tomorrow.
As the war escalates in West Asia and Gaza remains at the epicenter of a spiraling humanitarian crisis, there is mounting pressure on mediating parties and Netanyahu to push forth a lasting solution, one that both Israel and Hamas can agree to, and more importantly, a solution that can alleviate the suffering of 2.3 million Palestinians in Gaza.
While many innocent civilians are killed in Gaza every day, there's another side and another tragic story about those who are born and raised in the destruction. In the next story, we tell you about Gaza's children of war. Take a look.
Israel's military operations in Gaza are inching towards completing 4 months. At least 25,000 people have been killed, most of them women and children. Those alive are struggling to survive the most brutal impact of war. The most vulnerable group at the receiving end are children in Gaza, born into this war. A UN report has revealed that since October 7th, a baby has been born in Gaza every 10 minutes. That roughly amounts to over 30,000 newborns in the last 3.5 months. A constant barrage of airstrikes and a lack of food and basic supplies have forced many families to flee their homes multiple times.
I had to evacuate our home because of my fear for the newborns, and my wife was very ill. Unfortunately, we had to separate from my family. My father stayed at home when I was displaced. I cannot bear being separated from my father and leaving him there after we were displaced. It is a difficult and painful feeling.
The situation remains equally dire for pregnant Palestinian women who are yet to give birth. The prevailing humanitarian conditions and a destroyed medical infrastructure have put thousands of women at risk. Latest reports say that miscarriages have increased by 300% in Gaza. For many other women, lack of proper nutrition and medical care has triggered premature deliveries.
I suffered a lot during my pregnancy due to displacement from place to place and moving on the roads in dangerous situations. This caused me great fatigue and led to premature birth in the 8th month by caesarean section and one of the children remaining in the nursery for care.
Overcrowded refugee camps, little aid trickling into Gaza, unsafe drinking water and limited access to food has further worsened living conditions. Over 135,000 children under 2 years of age are at risk of malnutrition in Gaza. With the World Food Programme raising alarm over famine-like conditions in the enclave, survival in this war keeps becoming an uphill task for innocent civilians.
And now to an exclusive interview for WION. In this exclusive, Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammad Shtayyeh talks about Gaza, the situation now, and what the future might hold. Listen in.
My first question to you is the question about the ongoing situation in Gaza. If you can detail what is the current situation in the Gaza Strip.
The situation in Gaza is extremely catastrophic. This is a situation in which Gaza is a little tiny area, 364 kilometers, 2.3 million people, the most densely part in the world. Gaza Strip has been under attack since October 7, and also as a reaction to the Hamas attack on Israel. The situation is as follows. Until yesterday, we had 25,000 Palestinians who have been killed. 70% of them are women and children. 62,000 Palestinians are injured, and 1.7 million Palestinians have been forced out of their homes. 281,000 housing units have been destroyed between partial destruction and full destruction. Also, the Israeli Minister of Energy has switched off the water supply, electricity supply. Gaza is under siege. Food that is entering through the UN system is only 6 to 8% of what is needed. And most important is that the whole region lacks medicine. 27 hospitals out of 35 hospitals are out of service. Some of them have been fully and totally destroyed. Others did not have any fuel to operate. And the situation is extremely catastrophic. October 7, the temperature in Gaza, Gaza is a Mediterranean area. The temperature October 7 was 32 degrees centigrade, and now today is raining, is very cold, and people, when they left their homes, they were in t-shirts, and now they are really shuddering in the cold of the Mediterranean and also under the rain. Tents does not really protect them, and shelter is not available for most of the people who have been forced out of their homes from North Gaza to Middle Gaza, and then now all centered around Rafah area on the borders with Egypt. Only one entry point of international aid, which is Rafah crossing, that is the border between Palestine, Gaza, and Egypt. And Israel is in full control of this area now. And there are 5 entry points to Gaza that Israel is blocking, and international aid has been extremely slow, and people are dying because of hunger, and people are dying because of lack of medicine, lack of water, lack of food, lack of shelter. So those who might have not been killed by Israeli bombardment are facing death through other means. This is the situation. Just if you kindly allow, it will be very important for your audience also to know that here in the West Bank, the Israeli army has created 700 checkpoints. Also, in this region, 641 Palestinians have been killed. Some of them are at the hands of the Jewish settlers. You know, since 1967, Israel has planted 285 Jewish settlements with 755,000 Jewish settlers who have been living illegally on an illegally expropriated Palestinian territory and Palestinian land that is privately owned by people. And the situation in the West Bank, where the army is encouraging into the refugee camps here in Jenin area, in the Tulkarem area, in quite a number of districts of the West Bank. Also attacks on Al-Aqsa Mosque, as well as the humiliation of Christian pilgrimage who are here in Jerusalem and who have been visiting Jerusalem. So, my dear friend Sibal, the situation in all Palestinian territory is extremely catastrophic. It is not we who are occupying Israel. It is Israel that is occupying our land. And all what Palestinians have been fighting for is a day for freedom, a day of freedom, a day of independence, and a day in which Palestinians live side by side with the Israelis in a two-state situation. One state for the Palestinians on the borders of 1967 with Jerusalem as its capital. This is the area that Israel occupied in 1967.
So you've detailed the entire situation as to what is the current situation in Gaza. But are you hopeful that the situation will pacify? Are you positive about it, or do you think that 2024 will see a prolonged situation which we have seen starting last year?
That's a very good question. Look, the Prime Minister of Israel, Mr. Netanyahu, what he cares for is his personal survival. And his tactic is that he wants to prolong the war as long as he can in order for him to stay in power. So my prediction is that, as the Israelis have been saying also, that this war will continue until the middle of the year, and then some security arrangement later. So if anyone wants to predict where things are heading, obviously 2024 is going to be not the year for peace, even though everybody is pushing in the direction of two states. But obviously the Israelis, they are not partners to this peace process. Israel now has not achieved anything of the goals that they have declared, and only one thing they have achieved, which is a total destruction of the region. And as I mentioned, 25,000 Palestinians killed, 62 injured, and 281,000 Palestinian housing units. So they have not achieved the goals they have declared they want to achieve. Therefore, my prediction is that the war will continue, or the aggression on our people will continue, and maybe Israel will widen the sphere of the war in order for Netanyahu to continue surviving as a prime minister.
From mocktails pop-up bar to the first alcohol store in the kingdom, now Saudi Arabia has come a long way in liberalizing rules on the social front. Take a look.